Not a beautiful winter sun. There's warmth in it and all. So what we're going to have a look at here is some words from Pater Tobin in the Dáil. And then we're going to have a little, chop it up a little bit and talk about the relevancy that it has for every person in this country, right? So it's just a minute long. We'll have a little listen to it. I'm not going to interject in any way until it's finished, and then we can talk about it then. So Aontú put up this video in May of this year, and we'll have a little listen to it. It's just a minute long.
One of the problems with the migration issue in this country is the absolute chaos of the government's approach to it, and the fact that the governments really don't know what's going on. So a lot of the parliamentary questions that I found out, literally showed that the Minister for Justice either didn't know the information, wasn't asking the questions, or couldn't extract the information from the data. Also, that we're spending a lot of money with a really expensive process to differentiate between those who need help and those who don't need help. Those who don't need help are getting deportation orders, but 85% of those are voluntary deportation orders. And according to a parliamentary question that I've just received from the Minister rescinded 1,000 deportation orders just in the last 2 years. So you're waiting like maybe 10 years to have your process done at great expense to the state. The state decides you're not entitled to stay, makes that decision, and then the Minister for Justice turns around and actually rescinds that decision and lets the person stay. How can the government have any credibility in relation to this?
So, the Minister for Justice is rescinding these orders for people to self-deport, or for people to be deported in total, right? Which is what I suppose a lot of Irish people have been looking for, right? Is to start cleaning up this nonsense, getting a fast track going on people who can come and stay at the very least, right? And then there's people that just don't want these people coming here, full stop, right? You can hear both arguments if you want, right? But the Minister for Justice then is essentially overruling everything that comes prior to it, right? So she is the Don, all buck stops with her, except in terms of responsibility to damages which may result from her decisions, right? But she is overruling essentially the entire process that is geared towards coming up with, I suppose, the fairest answer to these people's applications. So she's just turning around at the end of it and saying, no, I'm keeping them. So what are we looking at here? We see that Helen McEntee, who's the Minister for Justice, is on board with the importation of all of these people who have already come here, and the legions who are going to be coming here right after the government signed the EU Migration Pact. So her job is to maintain law, maintain justice, keep the country functioning in a socially palatable way, right? According to Irish people anyway, according to our laws, and not so much customs or traditions, but laws should be coinciding with those things, right? So when you upend the rule of law and you just redefine everything out of existence, then everything else just fades away, because there's nothing substantial to anchor anything to, right? So, but either way, so she's on board with the Migration Pact, signing up to the EU, and also allowing for all of these people to come in here, right? But not only that, she also is speaking, or is giving lip service at least, to the deportation of people who don't belong here, right? So we'll get in and we'll go through the process with them. If they don't deserve to be here, then they get sent home, right? Or if they've no reason for being here, they'll get sent home. But what Pater Tobin is saying is that she has rescinded up to 1,000 of these deportation orders. So they've went through the process. It's been deemed that they've no business here. The grounds for them being here is not enough for them to stay here, right? So deportation orders given, on you go. She rescinded them. So she obviously they came across her desk and she said, you know what, we're going to hang on to these people. So this is going back to April and May as well, right? And I think the Migration Pact was signed in the summer then following this. So what she's essentially doing, and I hope people can see this, is using her position in the government as a public representative to manufacture, if not totally create outrightly, and to sustain a massive issue So an issue that people are going to have serious reservations with, they're going to be looking for solutions to, right? So manufacture this chaos and then offer the Irish people a solution. So keep bringing them in, keep bringing them in, keep bringing them in, pack them in, don't deport any of them, just shove them into every nook and cranny in Ireland, into everyone's face, into everyone's business, into everyone's locality, right? Tell them they're not allowed to say anything about it, or you might go to jail over it. And then have them come and beg you for a solution to this nonsense. And the solution she offers then is to cede even more of an ability to self-determine, to determine one's future and one's destiny as a nation and as individuals, right? And hopefully those two things align in a nice way, right? Which, whatever. And what this reminds me of, same playbook, details are different, right? So like you can have different stories, the actors are different, the scenarios and situations are different, but the overall pattern of the story is the same, right? So you're introduced to a hero goes through some struggles and adversity, hero nearly gives up on himself, hero finds the will to persevere, hero overcomes happily ever after, right? So the same pattern. And I recognize the same, as most of you all do as well, the same pattern is at play here as it was in play with COVID, right? So they lock you down, they take away your ability to work, they take away your ability to enjoy going to a restaurant, going to the cinema, going nearly anywhere, going on holidays, not allowed to do that anymore. Up until the point where people's lives become so unbearable that they demand a solution to this. And the solution came in the form of untested, unsafe, ill-effective vaccines, right? So we will cripple you, we will plunge you into uncertain times, we will make your life intolerable, almost unbearable, right? To the point where you come screaming for a solution. And the solution, this is the answer that always comes from this government, right? And nearly all governments, right? Because they're in the business of their business, which is to allow themselves more and more ever expanding power and control and say and influence over your life, right? So the answer to all problems societally in Ireland from this government is you give up more of your rights to us. And then we, in representing you, we give up our rights as a sovereign government, a sovereign nation, right? If those two words can go together, sovereign government, right? We give up our rights then to the EU, right? So it's not just your rights. Even the government, if you want to believe that the government's job is to defend and preserve the good things that you have in your life, right? They're not even pretending to be leaders anymore. They're ceding that ground to the EU, right? So it's the same pattern, the same playbook here. And all of the politicians that are in the Dáil now at the moment, barring a couple of them, and you know who they are, right? They're walking hand in hand with this stuff. They love it. They keep going for it. Never do you hear any politicians come out and say, my goal as a public representative is to limit the need for me to represent you publicly, because I would like to erode the influence and power that government has and free you up to express and live your life as best you see fit, providing you're not interrupting anyone else's, right? Go from there. But just on that then, so public representatives, local councillors. I've heard from a lot of local councillors that, like, they might be Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael or whatever other party they're a part of, right? And they will say that I'm trying to change the party from within, right? And I'm trying to do good things. Right. Local councillors' reputations and their history of employment and their legacy going forward, right? That's hinged on being useful to the people in your constituency, and your people who voted for you, right? Or even if they don't vote for you, doing a turn, right? Getting a fence built, or covering potholes, whatever the nonsense is, right? Their reputation is built on the backs of doing a few turns for people or doing some good for the community, right? But when people start to recognise that this government is just trying different ways, so COVID hit a brick wall, and people went from not wanting anyone around them, wanting to stay away from people, keep their distance, not go in anywhere, wanted to lock people up who thought differently and wanted to go out and live their life continuously, right? They went from that to overnight, I'm okay with bringing tens of thousands of people, don't know where they came from, don't know if they're vaccinated, don't know if they've any of that stuff, don't know if they've COVID, but let them in, that's the right thing to do because the news told me it's the right thing to do now, right? So people just, they'll do that. Where do I look? What do I say? What do I believe? Yeah, lovely. Right? So when these people, not all because you'll never get that, but when a large enough people begin to see what's going on, that regardless of the issue, the government is either directly involved in creating this issue, sustaining this issue, and elaborating and expanding this issue across the whole of Ireland, and then offering you a solution that is detrimental to your existence, right? When people begin to see that, any good that these local councillors may or may not have done in the past will be drowned by the negative association they have by being involved with any of these political parties who are pushing these things, right? So believe that and know that and understand that. So either there's time and enough for you to come out and speak out against these parties and to go, you know what, I'm not on board with this stuff of constantly pummeling people and constantly reducing their ability to just be free, right? And go their own way then. So knowing then what we know now, and what a lot of people guessed to have been the case prior to these things being resolved in any meaningful way, you're complicit now. You're complicit. It's nearly even too late for you to step out now and say, you know what, I was duped or whatever. It's nearly too late for that. So recognize the pattern in these things. The details are not for this point. They're not that relevant, right? It's the pattern. The government will create a situation. They will tell you there's only one solution to it, and they will increase the tension and the intensity of that situation up until the point where you beg them for the solution that they've come up with, right? Notice the pattern. It's the same playbook, regardless of what problem you're facing, whether it's the housing crisis, whether it's the COVID thing, whether it's the immigration thing, what hate speech thing, whatever it is. They will bleed it into the media, they will create societal stories around this, and then they will intensify it, enlarge it. They'll stop trying to fix it, right? They'll blow it up even more up until the point where you demand a solution from them and they just happen to have one ready made for you, right? So recognize how they carry themselves, recognize what they're doing, because when you recognize what they're doing, look behind the details, notice the pattern instead of the details, then you begin to step out of it and go, I see what you're at, right?